Well, regarding the first question, is that when I worked in Iraq, it was, needless to say, extremely dangerous. And I had to contend with exactly what all the millions of Iraqis had to contend with that were living there. It's dangerous. That's the one thing, is if you don't embed with the military, it's far, far more dangerous. But that's basically the only way it's possible to get that information out now, without it being censored by the government or by the corporate media or the military itself. Regarding I'll address that. That comes up so much. Well, it's Iraqis are just killing each other. They're bloodthirsty savages. If the U.S. leaves, they're just going to kill each other. And basically, this is total propaganda. By far and away, statistically, the biggest generator of dead bodies in Iraq today is the U.S. military, hands down. Airstrikes, U.S.-backed, funded, armed, directed death squads. We can look at the fact when John Negroponte was U.S. ambassador in Baghdad, he had retired Colonel James Steele. I mention these names because both these guys worked together in Central America in the 80s, setting up the death squads there. Well, flash forward to Baghdad in November, December 2004, January 2005. These same two guys are operating there. This is why Rumsfeld in January 2005 was even quoted in Newsweek magazine of debating whether or not we're going to use the quote-unquote Salvador option in Iraq. Well, that they already were using the quote-unquote Salvador option. So the death squads, which are now a massive generator of death in Iraq, they are sectarian-based death squads. They were organized, initially set up, and orchestrated all through the U.S.-run Ministry of Interior by John Negroponte and retired Colonel James Steele. So the biggest generators by the numbers are the U.S. military directly, also by airstrikes, and then the death squads. And then it goes on down from there, but there's this huge misrepresentation in the corporate media where all we see is massive car bombs and truck bombs, these spectacularly brutal attacks where hundreds of people are killed, but we don't see what happens when a 2,000-pound bomb dropped by an F-16 lands in an urban environment, which are just as spectacular and just as horrible and killed just as many people, if not more. And there's been a 5-fold increase in the use of air power in the first 6 months of this year as compared to the first 6 months of last year. To give you an idea of how much weaponry is being used and who is the sole, basically who's number one as far as generating the dead bodies. But yeah, by far and away, it's the U.S. military. That the suicide bombers, resistance attacks that end up taking out civilians, those are a minor percentage by comparison.